We'll get started. We're close enough. Welcome to the Murray City Municipal Council meeting for Tuesday, November 19th. Nice to see a full house. If you've got cell phones and they're not on silent, please put them on silent. First item on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance, and I've asked Mike Romero to lead us in the pledge. Mike, if you would.
If you would please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mike. All right, there are no minutes to approve, so that brings us to special recognition. First item is Murray City Council Employee of the Month, Josh Sturgis from Facilities Maintenance. Brett and Kim.
Come on up, Josh. There he is. He's just been begging us to do this for months and months. How you doing, buddy? Let me give you a hug. How are you? Good to see you. Good to see you. Josh, come on up. I know you love this.
Where do you want me?
I want you right there. All right. Okay, I didn't even look to see how many years you worked here because I know you've been here quite a while. You have been here 7 years. Were you here longer, part-time?
Part-time
Yeah.
for, 2 years.
Okay. Well, Josh, you started probably pretty close out of high school, didn't you?
Yeah, freshman year.
Freshman year?
in
In
college.
college, yeah. Well, Josh is our Employee of the Month, and I'm here to tell you, I am thrilled to be able to do this one. I didn't do it fully for this, but I was in St. George, and I thought, I really want to do this one. He's a good man, and so he's been with the city 7 years, really 9 years with part-time. And Kim Sorensen, his supervisor, will give more detail. But as a council, Josh, we just wanted to recognize you. And before they do that, I'm going to do something I've never done. Josh, do you know what the word guile means? Because most people don't.
Couldn't tell you, I know.
Okay, well, guile, I'm going to tell you what guileless means. And this is Josh. Genuine, honest, innocent, natural, real, simple, sincere, true, unpretending. And that's Josh. I mean, to a T. He's probably one of the most honest, hardworking individuals I've ever known. And so as a council, we'd like to recognize you and hand you this. Here's a certificate that we've got for you, Josh. And then also, and that's cool, and your name's going to go back on there forevermore for the next 100 years. So, but then, and like I said, Kim will do some more. But then we have a $50 gift card, and I know that goes to someone else besides you. So, yeah, your wife. In fact, I'd like to just deliver that to her. I knew that about Josh anyway. I knew darn well he wasn't. But anyway, as a council, we want to recognize you and thank you for your service. And really, we're just appreciative for all you do for the city. So let's give Josh a round.
Council, Mayor, thank you. As Brett said, the Employee of the Month is a great program, and it's especially great when we get to acknowledge and recognize someone like Josh. To give you a little bit of background on Josh, we hired Josh as a seasonal employee in 2008. He was attending Westland College in Iowa on a baseball scholarship, playing shortstop. He started at shortstop all 4 years. When he graduated, so he worked with us while he was going to college. When he graduated in 2012, we were fortunate that we had a full-time position opened, and we were able to hire Josh as a maintenance 2 worker, which he only held that position for 2 years, and he was quickly promoted to an irrigation specialist, which he held that job for about 3 years. And then he was promoted to a maintenance supervisor, facility supervisor under Jeff Martin, taking care of the Park Center. Something you should know about both the irrigation specialist and the facility supervisor. They are jobs that nobody thinks about. There's not a lot of credit that happens there. You think about these two positions when the grass is dry or when the pool water has green algae in it. There are also jobs that require a lot of evening hours, a lot of weekend hours, and I can tell you that Josh has spent some overnighters at the Park Center. So kudos to Josh, the Park Center, the way that it looks, the pool, to the facility. They're a credit to Josh's abilities and his work ethic. We are fortunate as a city to have Josh as an employee. I will also tell you, and I don't know if Josh wants me to or not, but he 3 days ago was his first anniversary of marriage to his wife Jess, and he also told me that he didn't sleep last night. He was so excited about coming tonight. That's not true. I asked Josh today what his favorite thing about the job was, the job at the Park Center, facility supervisor, and he said that I don't have to work outside and that I work with people, and that says a lot about Josh. He really does work well with people. People love working for Josh. They love working with Josh. And the other thing he said is working inside, well, you need to know that as a maintenance 2 employee and as an irrigation specialist, he was on snow call. And that didn't mean he got in a warm plow truck. That meant he got on a snowblower or on a four-wheeler without a cab. So we are thankful for Josh.
I wasn't really expecting to talk a whole lot, so I'm here. But I want to thank my family who's here right now. My mom, Dessa, my grandfather, Wes, my grandmother, Darlene, and then my wife, Jessica. I appreciate the kind words, Brett and Kim. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be here, and I have no complaints with the city. So I appreciate everything, and thank you for having me tonight, and
Thank you.
thank you.
All right, the next item is the swearing in of Murray City Patrol Officer Anthony Griffiths. Chief.
Thank you. Anthony, you want to come on up? I'd like to introduce Anthony to you. We're excited to have him started yesterday, so this all worked out really good. We get him in here and get him sworn in. He comes to us with some experience. He spent the last 3.5 years with agency in the south part of this valley that we won't say, Sandy, but we're really excited to have him here with us and bringing his experience, and I think he's in the process of finishing up his master's degree, so he comes, we're real excited to have him and his work ethic and what he brings here, so we know he'll serve the citizens of Murray well. That's the other good thing about him. He is one, so he actually lives here in Murray. So with that, we'd like to swear him in.
There's no paramedics here.
We can get him here while Chief's down there.
Mm.
Years ago, tomorrow, I gave birth to this kid.
I'm looking forward to working here. Like I said, couple years with Sandy. Learned a lot there. I know things are going to be different here, different in a good way. Look forward to offering you guys the services I have. I want to thank my parents, my wife Shelby, looking forward to having a kid, and my friend Brandon LaCagnina, who's another officer, and I wouldn't be here if he didn't talk me into it.
Oh, welcome to the force. It is a great one. And for Anthony and Josh, y'all don't have to stay to the end. So if you want to take a second and get out of here, we won't blame you. No, thank you. You're welcome. Okay, while they're clearing out, we'll open this up for citizen comments. We do have 3 public hearings on the agenda. So we'll take comments on each hearing at those times, but if anybody would like to address the council on any other matter, now would be the time to come forward. We ask that you identify yourself and your city of residence, and please don't take longer than 3 minutes. Would someone like to speak?
Hi, my name is Albert Stranger. I'm a resident of the Fire Clay area. Where I live at is like a parking, it's a parking war over here. I've had several cars towed away. I've had 2 tickets for $400, which is costing me. It's costing me $275 for the towing fee to get my car out of impound. It costs $40 a day, or $75 a day to get my car out of impound. It's costing me a day of work to get my car out of impound. And this is just totally unfair to me because it seems like this is a target zone. We get tickets from living, if you park in the tracks area and you visiting somebody that lives in the apartments over there, the tracks police will give you a ticket. And these tickets cost $400 for parking in a zone that's not where you're supposed to be parking. If you're not jumping on the tracks, you're parking in a zone illegal to them. So this ticket is ridiculous. I don't know anybody who's going through this, but this is really causing an effect because I got a warrant issued for my arrest for 2 parking tickets for being parked right outside of where I live. And I go to court for these tickets Friday. And I feel like this is unfair to the community. Thank you.
Thank you. We will take it under advisement. Anyone else?
Hello, my name is Rosalva Dominguez, and I live right off of Center Street. Most of you don't know me, but I am going to be City Councilwoman-elect in District 3, and I do want to say thank you, Jim Brass, for all your service. There's big shoes to fill. But I just wanted to go over and take this opportunity and kind of go over my canvassing efforts in District 3 and what I learned from citizens. I talked to over 3,000 citizens. We canvassed 3 times. Took a lot of obligation for my family and friends to come out. But one of their biggest concerns is historic preservations, but what is downtown revitalization going to look like? How is their voice going to be heard throughout that process? One thing that kept coming up is, throughout the campaign, and what we realized, there's multi-generational families here in Murray. I being myself, there's also multiple families living in one home, and they care about what's going on in their community just as much as anybody in this room. So we need to keep in mind why Murray keeps us here. Why do we continue to stay? What brings us, and how do we continue to keep that engagement? Another thing is, when canvassing, neighbors are really genuinely happy to have us at the door. They were excited that somebody was there, and I think as any of the candidates, we realized that people were happy to engage with us, people were happy to have that conversation, and for some of them, it had been years before anybody came to their doors. So that was really exciting, and to have those dialogues. You know, a lot of us didn't agree on everything, but there was dialogue being started. Our neighbors want government to do what's best for Murray, but they want them to be in mind, to keep keep them in mind in that process. And I know over and over I've heard, how do we do that? How do we get community engagement? And canvassing, I think it was a big factor, and our numbers showed in that, and the engagement was there. The engagement was there with the citizens. So that, I think, is really important. Maybe door to door. I don't know how we start that, but that was a good starting point for me. Small and important issues in my district specifically is speeding on Atwood, speeding on Revere Drive throughout the day. How do we manage that? And so speeding, sidewalks, enforcing code enforcement on blight homes in certain areas, especially in the annexed area, they already feel misplaced in those areas with government and the city. But citizens, again, want to support economic growth and want smart community growth in a very holistic way. So that's my recap. And I'm sure there's plenty more I can say, but thank you so much.
Thank you.
My name is Dylan Barney. I live at 4902 South Box Elder Street. And as a veteran, I feel that as a part of a city hall, or the new city hall, I feel there should be a memorial in a significant, not just a side location, to honor our fallen military and first responders. And when I went to one of the last meetings showing the city hall, it didn't show anything of that significance. These individuals have sacrificed for us, for this nation, and for the freedoms that we enjoy. We owe them very much, and the least we could offer them is a memorial to show that respect. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Seeing none, we'll move on. We've got the consent agenda, 2 items on it. I'll read them both. Mayor, you can introduce them and speak to it, and then we will vote. Item number 1 is consider confirmation of the mayor's reappointment of Clark Bullen to the Arts Advisory Board for a 3-year term to expire January 1, 2023. And item number 2 is to consider confirmation of the mayor's appointment of Mike Romero to the Personnel Advisory Board to fulfill a vacant position for a term to expire June 30th, 2020. Mayor, if you would.
Thank you. I don't believe Clark is here tonight. Clark, oh, you are here. We never get you out for reappointment, so thank you for being here. See you back there. Okay, so Clark is being reappointed for a 2nd term, so thank you for your service. We really appreciate it. And then Mike is being appointed. Most of you know Mike Romero. Mike will be appointed to finish the term of Richard Hutchison. And there's only about 7 months left of that term, but it's our intent to appoint him at that time to a full term on the Personnel Advisory Board. And if you had a chance to look at your packet, you see that Mike's very, very qualified. And in addition to his qualifications, Mike's been a very large part of the community. So, Mike, thank you for your willingness to serve.
Thank you
I
both.
ask you to approve the consent agenda.
And with that, I would ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Okay. I'll move confirmation of the mayor's consent agenda, which with the reappointment of Clark Bullen to the Arts Advisory Board for a 3-year term to expire January 1st, 2023, and with the appointment of Mike Romero to the Personnel Advisory Board to fulfill a vacant position for a term to expire June 30th, 2020.
I'll second that. I almost feel like I need to throw Kathy's name in. We can't do that. But when you think of Mike and Kathy, you kind of think of them together. But I'll second that.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. Jennifer, if you would.
Aye.
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 Aye. Thank you.
Welcome, Mike, and I'm so pleased that you're going to be on that board, and thank you for being willing to serve. We appreciate it. Mm.
Yeah, thanks to both of you.
Same with you, Clark.
Clark.
Thank you so much.
Okay, public hearings. First one is to consider an ordinance related to land use that amends the general plan to include strategies related to moderate income housing under Chapter 9.3. Jared Hall is presenting. Jared.
Thank you. As you'll remember from the Committee of the Whole, this is actually an amendment to the general plan related to Senate Bill 34 that was passed this spring, related to the moderate income housing plans that the cities have. Our housing plan meets almost all of the new requirements of the bill. They're not a problem for us, generally speaking. We will be reporting annually now, among other things. The only change that was required that needed a change like this was to add these two goals specifically to our general plans, moderate income housing element. Those two goals there: maintain reduced residential parking requirements in the mixed-use zones, and then again, the implement transit-oriented development around those transit stations. We already do those things, but we needed to state them specifically in our general plan. So we are proposing that amendment to just meet those requirements of Senate Bill 34. We did find that that was appropriate, and the Planning Commission recommended that the City Council approve that change. Do you have any questions for staff about that proposed amendment?
Yeah, question, comment, because I know we've gone over this recently.
Yeah.
On the maintain reduced residential parking requirements, we did increase our requirements within the city over and above what our friends at Wasatch Front Regional Council and elsewhere have told us, to address the gentleman from Fireclay's concerns. And the reason we did that was because of the issues at Fireclay. So I wanted to get that on the record because it's on my documents, a big highlight.
Yeah.
Reduced parking, and that has given us headaches, so we're aware of that. So,
yeah, so we have increased those standards a little bit, but we're still below what normal standards would be in a regular zone. So we're still responding to the transit-oriented nature, and that's what they're really looking for in the moderate income housing plan. So
okay, but we do recognize that two-bedroom homes are probably going to generate at least 2 cars.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Jared? Okay, I will open it up. Since we're the sponsor of this, I'll open it up for public comment. So we'll open the public hearing. Same rules apply. If you have any comment to make, please state your name and your city of residence. Come to the podium. We limit it to 3 minutes, and we do ask that you fill out a form. You don't have to fill one out before you speak, but do get one from Jan Lopez down here if you haven't already. Would anyone care to comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, I will close the public comment part of this and open it up for council consideration, followed by a motion, please.
There's no comments. I'll make a motion. Any comment?
Okay.
Okay. I'll move that we approve an ordinance related to land use, amend the general plan to include strategies related to moderate income housing under Chapter 9.3.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Jennifer, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. No, we're doing a tag team tonight. You're early. We'll get there. All right, next item on the agenda is consider an ordinance amending section 17. You always give me these. 17.48.040, 17.48.260, 17.48.270, and 17.48.280 of the Murray City Municipal Code relating to off-premise and electronic message signs. Jim.
Thank you, Councilman Brass. So we've been working on this for a few months now, coming back to off-premise signs. The council will recall that this past summer, we adopted a new sign ordinance citywide, our sign code for all different types of signs throughout the city. When we did that, we did not address off-premise signs at that time. We wanted to adopt a new sign code dealing with a lot of the changes and things we were dealing with citywide, and we wanted to come back to deal with off-premise signs. So when I say off-premise, that's outdoor advertising, billboards, things of that nature. And we have a lot of public here tonight, so I was just going to go through that briefly. So we're concentrating, we're focusing on just 4 sections within the overall sign code, which is a large document. First of which is 1748-040. We have definitions. So what we're doing is we're being specific with the definitions for off-premise signs within these sections that are proposed to be revised. And that's 1748-260, 48-270, and 48-280. So we're just focusing on those sections of code at this time. So section 1748-260 deals with off-premise signs. And I have said this before at both the Planning Commission, Committee of the Whole, and others that we've met with. Our intent is not to take anything away from off-premise signs, outdoor advertising, the billboard industry. Our attempt is to become consistent with state code. That has changed a lot in the last couple of years for outdoor advertising. And you can see I'm citing these sections of state statute, 109A 512 through 513. Those specifically deal with off-premise signs. The proposed language in this section is being revised, allowing for an owner of an off-premise sign to repair, refurbish, repaint, modify, upgrade, or otherwise keep a legal non-conforming off-premise sign safe and in a state suitable for use. So what we're getting at there is a lot of the billboards adjacent to I-15, where we have most, and we have some on I-215 as well. They're static, and what I mean by that is they just have the one image on front and back, advertising one thing, and then another person rents or leases that space, and it can change a few times a year. This would allow them to upgrade or repair to do an EMC, an electronic message center, which would allow them to advertise a number of items on that one billboard. And they're usually, you know, faced in an orientation where if you're on I-15 heading north, you can see that sign, and when you come back heading south, you can see the other side of that sign. So two faces in that situation. The other section that we focus on is 1748-270. This is height adjustment and relocation. Again, I'm making reference to state statute. This is nothing that I'm making up. I'm making reference to section 72.7.507 and 72.7.510, and this addresses height adjustments and what's allowed for what we call an off-premise interstate sign and an off-premise non-interstate sign. And there are specific criteria in state code that have created height allowances. And where we get into the this is usually adjacent to a freeway like I-15. You can measure from the grade of the sign to the peak, or you can measure above freeway grade. And we know in our case along 53rd and some of the other areas adjacent to I-15, we have a lower grade where those buildings and businesses are. So they're allowed that additional height allowance. And we're just trying to make sure our code is consistent in that area. And then the last section is electronic message centers. Again, we're referring to state code, and we have provisions, or we're suggesting provisions that are compliant with state code, allowing for an EMC type of sign for an interstate billboard or outdoor sign on I-15 or 215 where they can have the EMC without a conditional use. But those that are an off-premise sign that are on a non-interstate road, such as could be State Street, could be 53rd South, could be 9th East, we'd like those to go through a conditional use process so we can make the public aware. Because in the end, you know, we're here to protect our residents. You know, we want to accomplish many things here and give the outdoor sign industry a chance to advertise in a fair and equitable manner, but we also need to protect our citizens. So we've made findings within this, and we're referring to state code basically in the findings, that we feel that our proposed ordinance is compliant with state code. It meets our general plan criteria, and it meets our land use ordinance or land development code as well. And so we've had some meetings, and staff has made recommendations. So on October 3rd of 2019, the Planning Commission did hold a public hearing. People in the industry and others were notified of the public hearing. That was held on October 3rd, 2019 again. And the Planning Commission held that public hearing, took public comment, and forwarded a recommendation of approval to the City Council for the proposed ordinance amendments. And city staff would like the Planning Commission, I apologize. City staff would like the City Council to consider that recommendation tonight, and we'd like a motion of approval for this ordinance. And I did want to say, this ordinance amendment, that the Planning Commission vote on October 3rd was unanimous in this case. Thank you. I'm here for any questions you may have.
Any questions for Jim at this time?
I don't think so. You've covered it really well in our other meetings and in the committee of the whole, so thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you,
Okay.
Council.
In that case, then we'll open it up for public comment. Is there anyone from the public who'd care to comment on this item at this time? Same rules apply.
My name is Guy Larson. I'm and I'm here for on behalf of Reagan Outdoor Advertising, 1775 North Warm Springs Road. First, I want to just mention we appreciate the time that Jim and Jared and staff, your city attorney, has put forth in creating an ordinance that's mutually beneficial for both parties. I would like to see if we could continue this tonight to the following meeting. And the reason being is we met, as Jim has indicated, we've met with staff, and we have a couple of things we'd like to discuss with staff prior to this ordinance being voted on. We'd like to, more particular in some of the measurements and some of the things that are in the ordinance. So Reagan, and I'm not speaking for any other members of the industry, but Reagan is requesting a continuance until next meeting before you pass this, so we can follow up with staff with some questions that we have. So that's all I have to say tonight, but thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else care to comment?
I'm Lloyd Jones. I'm from here in Murray. And I just had a question for Jim. One of the statements he made was, we are here to protect our citizens. And with this change in the ordinance, what are we protecting us from? That's my question.
Okay, thank you. He'll come up.
That's all.
All right. Anyone else? All right, seeing none then, I'm going to close well, no, let's hang on a minute. Because there's been Jim, why don't you answer the question?
So with any conditional use, which we're saying that an EMC type of sign, a larger sign, would be adjacent to residential, that requires a conditional use permitted process, and we're looking to protect the health, safety, and welfare of our residents. One of the things we look at is the light. You know, what is the light source? How bright is it? What's the impact to adjacent residents? So we're looking at that outdoor illumination, making sure it meets certain foot candles and things of that nature. It gets a bit scientific. If we do have a lot of concerns, we can have someone from the industry come measure it for us. But those are the big things that we have recently discussed in updating our sign ordinance. We just want to make sure that we don't have a situation where we have a bunch of homes adjacent to a large sign that has EMC that is bright throughout the night. That could be an impact to the neighborhood. That's our biggest concern.
Thanks, Jim.
Yeah.
Okay, as I understand it, with the changes in state law also on sign code, that's one of the reasons it brings us here. One of the things that they do encourage and allow is for sign companies to reach out. Large spider running across here now. To reach out and ask questions of staff and the legal department, and we have had questions asked. And so I'm aware of that. I saw the list of questions. It has gone to the attorney's office. So we can also consider, as requested, a continuation. And if we're going to do that, then I'd like to keep the public hearing open so that if, when we continue to the next meeting, if we continue to the next meeting, we'll still have time for public comments, depending upon what changes are. Is that proper procedure, Gio? Okay.
When's our next meeting? December?
December 3rd.
There, thank you.
You ready for a motion?
Yes.
Well, I'll make a motion that we move this item of business till December 3rd so the parties can meet a few more times and see if there's anything else that needs to be answered.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion on this? Jennifer, if you take the vote, please.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
I need to make a point of disclosure. I do represent Reagan Sign Company as a lobbyist.
Okay, so the motion carried. This item will be continued until the December 3rd meeting. We will reopen the public hearing if additional comment is warranted and make a decision on it at that time. All right. Now we're here to the consider an ordinance amending Chapter 17.170 of the Murray City Municipal Code relating to the Murray City Center District. Jared. Mayor, you wanted to speak first.
Thank you. While Jared's coming up, I wanted to take just a minute.
That's where we're going.
Yeah. I want to take just a minute and
Sure.
make a couple of comments on some concerns that came up after the last meeting, and I just wanted to make a couple of clarifications. The first thing I wanted to state is what these proposed changes does not do, and that is it does not eliminate the History Advisory Board. Doesn't change the scope or purpose of the History Advisory Board, which is to advise the mayor and city council regarding history and historic preservation. And in fact, the ordinance states that the board will identify, document, preserve, and interpret the city's historic resources to promote awareness, understanding, appreciation, and preservation of the city's heritage and foster community identity and civic pride. That is unchanged. It will not impact the ability for CLG grants, and it does not discourage or prevent historic preservation. However, it doesn't make historic preservation the single most important consideration in redevelopment. And there have been some comments, and in fact, tonight in our Committee of the Whole presentation, it was commented that renovation of well-constructed structures is less expensive than comparable new construction. And that's probably true in some cases, but certainly not all cases. But even so, if it is true, great, because nothing in this ordinance change will prevent a building owner or investor from renovation. But the choice will be made by the building owner or the investor. So as a proponent of downtown revitalization, I just encourage you to carefully consider the presentation again that Jared will be making, and carefully consider the public comments that will be made here tonight. And then at the end of the day, I'm confident you'll make the best decision that'll help us move the revitalization of Murray forward. So with that, Jared.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. So with that kind of background and intro, I'll jump right in and kind of cover the specifics quickly, and we can open it up for comment and questions from the council. So I know you're familiar with this from the Committee of the Whole discussion, but for the public process, we are talking about an ordinance amendment to the MCCD zone, just the downtown area that's in orange there in the middle of the map. So it's about 100 acres of the city. So all of the changes that we're talking about tonight and all the different rules that apply there only apply to this specific zone. I want to make sure that's clear as we look at it. And as you see in the purpose statement to the side there, this is a zone that's intended, it's a mixed-use zone. It intends to accommodate commercial development, residential development, employment. There should be all kinds of uses happening here together, pedestrian-oriented and design-heavy project. One of the issues that we found in looking over the years as the planning staff dealing with projects coming in and things, we identified things that we felt like were impeding redevelopment of the downtown. That's been a big goal of the city that we've heard for a long time, as the mayor mentioned. The first of those that we dealt with was in process. A couple of things to point out, because I know process is important to people. This the proposed ordinances don't change the fact that all new construction gets a review by the Planning Commission. It doesn't change the fact that major alterations would get a review by the Planning Commission, or the fact that even a minor alteration, hanging a sign, hanging an awning, would get a review at least by the planning staff for an approval of some kind outside of just a building permit. It does, however, change the name of those kinds of approvals to design review from certificate of appropriateness, and we have recommended eliminating the design review committee, which is an extra body that's architecturally oriented and reviews projects before they go to the Planning Commission. So in the interest of keeping the process flowing and not slowing projects down, we have recommended that removal. Another item to think about are the design guidelines. One of the things that we look at in this zone, as opposed to just having codified ordinances and rules, there are design guidelines associated with the zone that we look at and apply to projects as they come through the process. We have not recommended removing the design guidelines. We do, however, want to clarify that they are guidelines, and the language that we propose does that they're to be considered when projects come through. Not applied in the same way that code is applied, but considered for their to adherence to their principles, and also that we want to revamp the guidelines and make them simpler to use. We've given you an example of that in the past. That's still up on the screen there. Wanted to focus on kind of the principles themselves and broad ways to implement those and make sure that projects are addressing them when they're reviewed. Another issue that we deal with is historic preservation. The mayor covered that very, very well, so I won't take a lot of time with that particular aspect, but we have recommended changes to the historic preservation ordinance that would make it, that we feel would make the process of redevelopment of the downtown viable. It's been a big hindrance in the past, just the way that it's currently written. We wanted to take historic preservation from being a deterrent and make it an incentivized deal. So we're proposing that rather than simply try to deter people from dealing with historic buildings or deter them from demolishing historic buildings or partially demolishing buildings, that we incentivize their reinvestment in those projects and the renovation of those structures to the best that we can. To that end, we're recommending that we waive building permit fees and all kinds of application fees on projects that do include renovating those historic buildings. Just a couple of pictures of historic buildings in the downtown. It's a key part, and we want to recognize that. We also want to recognize that the city has spent a lot of time and effort and money in support of historic preservation for buildings that make up a significant part of our downtown. The Murray Theater, the Murray Mansion, the Desert Star Theater, Dave Murray Music, those both received grants in the past. So just a point there. Sustainability, we have proposed a change to the sustainability portion of the ordinance. We want to, again, incentivize sustainability as opposed to listing things for people to do in projects. The city public buildings will be built to high-performance building standards as opposed to LEED. That was a change that was made some time ago. We're keeping that in this proposal, and then proposing that private construction be incentivized to seek third-party certifications, and that language has been added. We did look into, based on the committee of the whole discussion, some of the specific items that are struck from that sustainability section in this proposed amendment. Those are covered under energy reviews in the building department, in the building code reviews. Most of those things are taken care of through engineering as well. We're already pre-treating stormwater as a standard now and things of that nature. So we really don't lose any level of review in this change. It's just changing from deterrent to incentivization. We feel good about that as a proposal. Area and frontage regulations have changed slightly. The biggest change here that I want to focus on is that, because much of this is still the same, we're looking for pedestrian-oriented and walkable sorts of areas, design-heavy areas. To that end, we're keeping most of these things intact. You're looking at buildings that are out toward the street. We've included a little extra setback ability so that in design, you can set a building back slightly further from the street. So you can see on that diagram, that hatched area, the hashed area, is the potential setback of a building from the street. So we've increased that a little bit to allow designers and developers a little more room to accommodate ADA, maybe on-street parking, outdoor dining, that kind of thing. We do still have requirements for public improvements that'll look nice and be very pedestrian-oriented. And again, you'll see most of those buildings fairly close to the street. This is just talking about that building scaling and density. We are making a recommended change to the ground floor commercial requirement. So when you're building multifamily housing in this zone, which is an allowable use, you have to do the main floor. The ground floor has to be completely residential. That's problematic for deep lots, as we talked about with mixed use standards. Sorry? Oh, commercial, sorry. You have to do ground floor commercial. And so we were proposing, just like we did with the mixed-use zone, that the street-facing building facades be required to provide that commercial ground floor, and for a depth of 40 feet. That allows the developer then to park to the rear of that, provide more parking for the units, and increase that density without affecting the project or the neighborhood as much. That brings us to height. We have proposed a couple of changes to height, but we've left a couple of things significantly intact. And so I wanted to start with the things that are left intact. North of Court Avenue on Center Street in the MCCD, we do have an area that's zoned MCCD on the west side of Center Street. Those properties north of Court Avenue are all still restricted to 35 feet in height. That's the standard residential zoning height. We haven't proposed going any taller than that. Other than that, in the MCCD zone, the other thing that hasn't changed is that you're not required to build at least 40 feet or 4 stories in the, on the east side of State Street. You're allowed to if you can meet height distance requirements. On the west side of State Street, you're required to build at least 40 feet. We've left that intact. The other requirement for height is that you have to be a certain distance from residential zoning in order to get different heights. The maximum height allowed in the zone is still 135 feet. You can't, we won't approve a project to build to that height unless it's at least 150 feet from residential zoning right now. We're proposing that that be changed to more than 100 feet. So a limit of 100 feet as opposed to 150 feet, and then proposing an interim height allowance. When your setback for the building is between 80 and 100 feet, you can go up to 75 feet for the building. Anything within that 80 feet distance to a residential zoning boundary is no higher than 50 feet. I have a couple of illustrations that our associate planner, Zach Smallwood, prepared for us. This first one shows you the 80 feet, and this is a graphic depiction that we feel like helps you understand what a house that's 25 feet tall looks like in relationship to a building that would be 50 feet tall, 80 feet away. So that's your first requirement. If you're closer than, if you're at that 80-foot line, you can't build taller than that. The next level would be if you're at least 80 feet away or 80 to 100 feet away, you can build up to 75 feet. And there again, it's that 25-foot home and the distance represented. And then finally, that at least 100 feet away or further than 100 feet away, you could go to the maximum 135-foot height. Again, this only applies everywhere other than north of Court Avenue, adjacent to Center Street, because that's limited to the 35 feet. Parking, this was mentioned earlier, Councilman Brass. So we have recommended a slight increase in parking from 1.25 to 1.5 units for 2 bedrooms or less for units, and 1.4 to 2 parking spaces per unit for more than 2 bedrooms. The minimums don't change. You have to have at least 1-to-1 in this zone. We will allow anyone to go higher than that standard if they want, if the Planning Commission can approve that, but it has to be in a parking structure or within the envelope of the building, that kind of thing. So we do that. In the commercial standards, we haven't recommended any changes. We don't want to see overparked commercial unless it's in parking structure, so it's not affecting the pedestrian aspect of the streets. So they're able to do it, but we want to see that approved by the Planning Commission. We have found that these changes, staff finds and the Planning Commission found that these are in line with the general plan and that they're what we need to do for the redevelopment of the downtown to help spur that. And the Planning Commission, I'm going to start with staff's recommendation. We're recommending what we presented to tonight. The Planning Commission recommended slightly differently that the Planning Commission's recommendation was all of staff's recommendations with the exception of the removal of the DRC from the planning review process, and with the exception of the changes that we proposed to the historic preservation portion of the ordinance. You have any questions for staff at this time?
Any questions for Jared?
We will. Well, I'm sure we will after this. He talks faster than the Flash, but you're good.
There you go. All right, thanks, Jared. We'll open this up for public comment. Again, same rules apply.
My name is Rebecca Santa Cruz, and I'm the current chairman of the History Advisory Board and also the owner of a historic home on the National Historic Register. Just a couple of things with the revisions that were suggested, where I'm not sure at what stage we are going forward with some of the things that were presented to us, but I'd just like to comment on some of them. The first thing is 17170.070 5B. Everybody on the History Advisory Board agrees that the requirement of 125% of estimated cost of a project is unreasonable. And so we're more than fine with that being redlined. 5D, proposed value of a project must be at least 5 times the current assessed value of the property. This also seems like an unreasonable objection to development, and so those are some things that we feel are unreasonable. But the number one thing that we feel is extremely important is regarding the list of historic buildings. And removal of the list from the historic buildings from the city ordinance seems like an open invitation to demolition. If a private property owner can request removal from the list by simply submitting it to the mayor's office, what's to prevent a developer from buying a historic property with the intention of demolishing it and simply applying to have the property removed from the list? That should give it landmark protection. It seems like the list becomes moot as it is no longer protection. The History Board would like to remain involved in that process. We'd also, it seems like we have a gap here in the code, and that is a process by which a historic building might be removed from the list. We don't really have one within the zone. My suggestion is that maybe we take the language that's there for demolition of a historic building and move it into removal. And the criteria for that is, 1, the owner of the property would suffer financial hardship and be deprived of economic return. 2, the value of the owner's property would be diminished, and having a property sit for years unoccupied might meet that criteria. And 3, a building has been verified as unsafe and repairs are impractical. Again, the longer a building sits, the more likely that is to happen. Regarding forcing property owners to remain on the list against their will, I think maybe if we consider a process by which they might be removed from the list, might help address that.
Your time.
Don't I get 5 minutes because I'm...
Are you representing the entire board?
Yes, I am.
None
I've
of
been
them,
voted.
no one else will come and speak from the board.
They told me I was the spokesman.
All right, you get give her 2 more minutes.
Okay. The next thing is item 3E4, and that's if a historic property is demolished, there should be more extensive mitigation than a plaque, which was what was suggested. The Utah Theater was sold last week, and part of the negotiated deal was that $1 million was to be spent on preservation and reincorporation of historic architectural details. If a small percentage of a building's cost is required for preservation of some of these details, we'll honor these historic structures and help preserve their stories. In the interest of transparency and the democratic input that crafted the current MCCD code, I would urge you to remember that a future that doesn't remember its past forgets it. Thank you.
Anyone else?
My name is Dylan Barney. I live at 4902 South Box Elder Street, pretty much in the middle of the MCCD district. Over the years, I've seen a lot of redevelopments come and go and things come and change, but the biggest change was when the Fashion Place Mall went in and basically got it downtown Murray City and changed its character. There's not a whole lot of the unique character of Murray City left that was here when my family moved here, which makes me wonder sometimes, as I've seen other small cities, why I bother to stay, but I do. Murray City has a unique character that has developed over the years and should be kept. And the Design Review Committee should be part of it. It should be incorporated in it, and they should be asked about it. I don't know why there's such a hurry to fast-track development in the area when development hasn't happened for quite a long time. But development is going to happen one way or the other. Money from property or for property to develop the area is nice and it's important, and we need the taxes to support our community. On the other hand, if Murray City decides it wants to have a lot of fancy buildings like any other city, then maybe the city should incorporate with other cities and just become part of them and have part of their designs incorporated within what was and currently now is Murray City. Thank you for your time, and
Thank you. Anyone else care to speak?
My name is Miranda Carter. I'm a Murray citizen, and I would like to ask the council to consider postponing this vote in favor of getting a little bit more active public participation on the issue. I attended the Planning Commission meeting in October to listen to some of this. It was really the first time that I'd had the opportunity to hear about the changes proposed, and I was a little bit sad that there wasn't a lot more public involvement, especially considering that I heard some great ideas there and tonight from the History Advisory Board that could help address a lot of the issues that this is trying to solve in perhaps more meaningful ways to preserve some of the character of the city center district. I think that one of the things that we haven't considered is that changing the code seems to me to be a little bit more passive of an approach. It's a way that we're encouraging people to come in to redevelop, not putting up a lot of steps for people to consider the impact that they're making on our community with those developments. And I don't know that that's necessarily going to generate the vibrancy and the public use of the city center district in the same way that a more active approach, perhaps looking at more public participation in workshops or other public meetings to get feedback on these changes, other forms of generating foot traffic in the area immediately. Things like the Culture House project that's been done in Boston is a really great option for this area, I think. Bringing in a community space that brings people to the area seems like a really great option to revitalize and start bringing the demand there. Also, things like the street fairs that the Salt Lake neighborhoods do would be a great option to get people excited about this area and bring people in. I think that these may be things that we could do that would start to solve these problems and get more input into them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello, Adam Thompson, 831 East 3 Fountains. I live in District 3. So I've done a lot of work and time talking with people in this community, whether it's Janice or our current city councilman, and I'm trying to see it from both sides. So my background is I have a master's of real estate development from the University of Utah and a graduate certificate in urban planning. So I have a little bit of planning and development side. And I understand what's going on, meaning that I think this is trying to be pushed through a little bit quicker than normal because the people who represent the city right now have had that experience and that background and that who can make the best decisions currently. So I trust that process. My concern is what she touched on a little bit, which is the list. I think that's the biggest concern right now because from a developer's perspective, me as a developer, what I would do is I'd go knock on somebody's door and I'd say, I'll pay 70 cents on the dollar right now because I know I can demolish your home and get density and get money off of that, which is fine. I mean, I understand that. But when you look at zoning, it's hard to quantify impact. It's the same thing with the environment, right? How do you measure the stained shirt from the pollution? Well, how do you measure the Home 2 Suites hotel that went in next to your property? How do you measure that on your community fabric in your neighborhood? And so when you consider these ordinances, what I would suggest is that maybe get with the Historic Review Board and get something put together within the next 30 days to iron out those details. The devil is always in the details. The 125% cash bond absolutely needs to be removed. You'll never get any development in that area if you keep that in there. That's a great proposal. But the list, I think, that's where the rubber meets the road, because we're beating around the edges with the height and all that stuff. That's not what people are concerned about. People are concerned about the removal of the list. So, thank you.
You may be surprised to hear that I actually was not planning to speak tonight. But anyway,
But
my
you
name's
did.
Janice Robel.
Hi, Janice.
Okay. I think a lot of it is prefaced for me by what we were able to listen to, or the council was able to listen to it during the committee of the whole, with Ben Levenger's presentation on community revitalization, which is exactly what this is all about. This is why the staff has worked so hard and everyone has worked diligently to try and figure out what's going to help improve community revitalization. But I do think there's some things that have been a little bit missed. So I agree that I think my preference of what I would ask the council to do at this time is to table the vote. But if the council feels like they need to take action right now on some aspect of this, of these revisions, then I would hope that you would take advantage of the small amount of community input that has been able to be brought to you already, and then whatever will be brought to you at this time during the public comments, but to at least go with the recommendations of keeping the DRC and the historic preservation section. I think what the history board added has to some aspects of the history preservation section that needs to be reviewed. I think those are some things to really look at also. So it feels like what's really hurting, I mean, what has been such a propelling this is people want to see action, immediate action. And so I propose that one of the best ways that we can do immediate action right now is to contract with a firm such as Downtown Redevelopment Services, because they will really help us gather the community input. As it says, a community document such as an ordinance needs community support. And we have not, that's not been adequate here. So we've got to get something together that will help us gather in a very good way that community input, and in multiple ways, as was mentioned earlier. So to help us get that comprehensive vision. And then I think we all know development takes time. We are all seeing how long it takes for the city hall to get put in place, for the towers that are going to have to get moved, and that the fire station is taking longer. So we recognize that that development is going to take time. When it does come in place, it's going to take some time. So in the meantime, there are things we can do with our downtown right now. There are things we can do with the exterior of our buildings, and we can spruce it up. And I know that that's very possible, and that will help in one way, in a very small way, but a big way for the community to feel more about this downtown being a part of us. And this downtown is our downtown. It is made up of many different buildings, but it is our community's downtown. So the community needs to have a vital part of input for what will happen in this downtown. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Again, you don't have to fill out the form before you speak, but we do ask that you fill it out before you leave.
Hi, thank you very much. Kim Anderson, 1144 Chevy Chase Drive. You all received a letter from me that took me about 4 hours to write and another 2 hours in consideration of writing it and what to do. I do have some photographs. I don't know that we're going to have time to show them, but maybe if you can just go through some of them. Some of them are the existing photographs of existing buildings as they are now. Just as a background, I'm a licensed architect. I have a planning certificate from the University of Utah. It's not a full, so I do have some background in the issue. Some of the, and in my letter that I talk about is the facade renovation money that is available. Those types of things really could help out. This is a picture of old downtown Murray. My problem with this computer is it's not going to show. I can't go through them one at a time, or I have to do one at a time. Anyway, I'd like to see you keep the review committee. I'd like to see the historic preservation go on. I'd like to see that there be more input that's also been brought up. You know, I think back of my mother's cousin, Arlette Day, of Day Murray Music, and I think that she would probably have a fit with some of the things that are going on here. I know she appreciated what did take place with the renovation of the Day Murray Music, but there are just things that can be done, and I just don't want us to be forced into doing this so quickly without the citizen input. I think that that's a big deal of where I see the problem. I don't mind the removal of the 125% and some of those things. Anyway, this is one of a good picture of it. In my letter, I talk about certain things that make the buildings feel the way they are. The setback of the windows from the front, the brick details, the cornices, the eaves, even the canopies on here. But what's there now is plywood over top of good architecture from the past. And with the $20,000 or $25,000 from the federal government to help replace some of those facades, we can bring those back, and we can have Murray as something more than another downtown anywhere USA. I talked about last time Doug Wright was talking about how he drives through Murray and he knows he's in Murray. But if that changes, if all of a sudden we've got the hotel on the corner everywhere, or we've got Shopko or Walmart or 7-Eleven with their facades as their corporation wants, we're anywhere downtown USA and not Murray. I think that's where we really need to go. Please postpone the vote. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else?
If the city council decides to
Name and place of.
Kathleen Stanford, 487 East Vine Street. If this passes through, we all lose it. We pretty much have all failed. I feel like we failed at really being creative with solving these problems. I don't believe it's the historic preservation section of the code that's the problem. We have not been creative enough in helping Mike Todd and Mike Lamson with their buildings. I suggested to the Planning Commission, again, if we taxed all new construction 0.5% to put into a fund to help these people with their historic buildings. I mean, 0.5% of the cost of their construction to help these historic buildings, we could really revitalize. Can we just sit down and talk about some of these things to help these people? I understand that the city council and the mayor, you want to have this be under your reign of, the success of the downtown, but the success of our downtown really does hinge on a lot on the historic buildings. And I don't feel like the Home 2 Suites or the Center Court Apartments have necessarily helped the downtown. We need to be very careful before we get that preservation code, and I do think it needs more input from people that care about historic preservation in the city, and I think you know who we are. I told Jared Hall, I'm really upset that you didn't even talk to me about these changes. I mean, everyone knows that I have a group that's interested in historic preservation, and we would like to be involved in this. Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, since my name was just mentioned, my name is Mike Todd, and we'll gladly take a 0.5%. That'd be great. I'll never get finished in 3 minutes, so since I have so much invested in downtown Murray, maybe you can give me an extra minute or so.
We'll give you 5, Mike.
I said to myself, gosh, it's interesting that so many people are interested in my property. And with the exception of the city, I think I'm the largest property owner in this district. I may be wrong, but the largest single property owner in the district. And as some of you know, we own Desert Star Playhouse and the related businesses there and most of that side of the block. We have invested several $1 million in renovating downtown Murray many years ago, and you can now see that it's falling into disrepair again, because we fought hard against this MCC district, and we lost several years ago. We said it would kill downtown, and that's exactly what it has done, just come to a screeching halt. Let me just tell you a very brief story. Nearly every day, someone comes into our buildings and they come into our box office in shock. They say something like this: "I've never been in here before. I can't believe how beautiful it is inside the buildings. What you've done is incredible." And then they realize what they've said because they're implying something else. And they're right. The outside looks like trash. Now, we've spent millions of dollars putting in awnings, putting up, restoring the buildings to what they were once like. And what the biggest mistake I made, because I was one of you many years ago, trying to preserve downtown Murray, and I see other heads shaking who have skin in the game, lots and lots of money invested. But the biggest mistake I made was preserving those buildings. I should have torn them all down and then rebuilt them to look old. I would have been way better off. It would have looked nice, and I would have had buildings that aren't really now still just falling down from the inside out. So, I appreciate your concern. I appreciate your passion. In a lot of ways, I am you. But there's one big difference. I've put several $1 million into doing what you want to do. And I want to be as polite as I possibly can, but if you've got a building on that list that you care passionately about, buy it and save it. Very little has changed in decades. I've been in Murray now for 32 years. I don't live here. Actually, I live here. I just don't sleep here. So I don't get to vote here. I'm here more hours of the day than I'm not, but because I don't sleep in the Murray boundaries, I don't get to vote here. But I'm every bit a Murray resident, and I've got millions of dollars invested in your city and my city to prove it. I'll be brief to finish up here. If you want something different to happen to downtown, let's not do the same thing over and over again. There's a saying, what's the definition of I can't quote it, the definition of doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result? Insanity? Yeah, well, that's the insanity that we've been dealing with now for 3 decades. And the MCC district just absolutely put a cap on it. It's convenient for me now to say, told you so, but now let's not do it again. Let's move forward. I don't want you to wait. I want you to vote tonight in favor of this. Thank you. Is this perfect? No, it isn't perfect. There are still some issues that I have, some of the setback issues, some of the height issues, some of the other issues. It's not perfect, but it's so much better than what we have now. We need to vote for it now and approve it, and then we need to go back the same way Congress does, the same way our legislature does, and when you find something that needs to be tweaked and fixed, fix that one thing surgically one at a time. That's what I suggest and ask you to do tonight. Vote in favor, move it forward, let's get going, and
time.
Yeah, that's it. I'm out of time. So
thanks, Mike.
Thank you very much.
I'm Susan Wright. I'm a resident here in Murray. Ditto to everything Mike said. Me and my husband have owned 11 buildings here in Murray. And you probably know the Murray Mansion. We renovated that. And it was a black hole. It just keeps giving you pleasure every day to just keep repairing it. All these other buildings we have owned, you know, the last meeting when you showed all those pictures of the roofs and the pipes and all, I thought you'd taken pictures of my buildings. But anyway, you know, there's a saying, you can only put lipstick on a pig, and it's still a pig. Besides these low roofs, these one single story buildings, all they're going to bring in, if they stay and be renovated, are what they're bringing in now. Tattoo parlors, bars, loan sharks, as I call them. This is what we have downtown Murray now. It's outlived its past. They don't do cities like this anymore. We're never going to have downtown Murray with Hendrick Shoes and J.C. Penney's. That's gone. And if you're always looking backward, you can't ever move forward. What we need to do is putting something grand. And I know what Mike said, when people come in the Murray Arts Center, they're always shocked too. Oh, this is so nice. And that's what I thought, because it looks so crappy on the outside. There's only so much you can do to these old buildings. We've done everything we can to all these old buildings, and they're still just old. And they're still just single stories. We need to bring in nice retail so we can get nice businesses in on the ground floor, not bars and tattoo parlors. So I recommend you vote. And people are saying, why are we in a hurry? Hurry? The Grecian Garden was torn down 15 years ago. I mean, I don't think we need to wait another 15 years. I think you need to vote on this and stop killing downtown Murray. Everybody says what an eyesore it is, and we need to move ahead, make something really wonderful there, and preserve the mansion, Days Music. These are nice historic buildings that can stay, and that's our future. You know, that's why we have museums and videos and books, is to live in the past. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Again, my name is Lloyd Jones. Just a comment on moving quickly. When we move quickly, when the Senate or the legislature moves quickly, and we try and revisit and we try and correct what has happened, oftentimes it's sunsetted. It's past fixing. And so we probably are well advised to look and think and try and make the process as good as we can, because oftentimes when you say you're going to fix it or you're going to renovate it, much like an unfinished basement, it stays unfinished. And so, you know, we need to make sure we're doing this right. And I do recognize the money that has been paid for buildings and the attempts that have been made. I'm a lifelong resident of Murray myself, and I used to go to the Murray drugstore, and I used to go to Hendrickson Shoes, and I used to get my bike fixed at Carlson, right? So I recognize, but when we think about history and character of a city, I mean, some of the historic cities are known because of the architecture, are known because of what those old buildings look like. Paul Revere's house in Boston is not a beautiful house, but it is a historic house, and it carries some importance. There are important buildings that are here in Murray that need to be evaluated and need to be looked at. And I do, you know, bring up the question of historic preservation. That's not the single most important consideration. But I want to know what the list of the considerations are. Is it even on that list? And so when we consider this, I think it would be well to maybe sit back a little bit, because we have been dealing with this for 30 years. So another 30 days or 3 months is not going to change that process, is not going to change that and make that a huge distinction. So I would just add that I would ask this council to consider the continuation of this question. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Now's the time. Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public comment portion of this and open it up to council discussion. It's interesting, Susan. I've done a lot of research. I'm concerned about downtown. It's my district for another month and some change. But I also live here. I've been to Mike's store. I go to Crow and the Pitcher down the street. You know, I get my bicycles from Jerk's Bike Shop. I'm sure many people who are lifelong residents of Murray stopped going to the Murray Drug Store and started going to Walgreens or started going to Walmart when they showed up. And yes, our mall, which is very good for us, made a big impact, but things do change. With this one, Heart of Murray rebounds after Wright's transplant. It's an article from the Eagle, found this. Thursday, February 24th, 1994. Starts out, I'm not going to read the whole thing. It says, a decade ago, Murray's old downtown area was dying. The few blocks between 45th South and Vine Street, which once had been identified as the heart of Murray, was fast on its way to becoming a tombstone. And what changed that is two people came in and started buying up buildings, and they generated interest in downtown, and more people came in. You got the Grecian Garden, you got some of the other stores that are now gone. So from 1994, we had this small renaissance because two people with their own money, as I think, Mike, you just said, if you see a building you like, buy it, started to do that. They mentioned Day Murray Music, Between the Cottonwoods Restaurant. Don't remember that one. Grecian Garden did eat in there a couple of times. One got shots afterwards, I think. But it was good food. And all the different places that are gone now. One of the advantages or disadvantages of being around for a while is I got to live with the downtown historic overlay district. And I saw what that did. And the owners of property downtown said, fix this because it's a problem for us and we can't do anything. And so we did the MCCD. And yes, I'm guilty, Mike, and you know it. We thought it was the right thing to do, and clearly it hasn't been. So, you know, for all of you, it sounds like this has happened very quickly, but I've been here for 16 years, and we've been kicking this thing around for 16 years. And, you know, you get reluctant. How often do you kick it to the curb or kick it down the street a little bit further to look at it again later? I don't disagree. There's things, I think there's little bits and pieces in here that concern all of us. What I can tell you is it is a redevelopment agency project area, and what that means is if somebody comes in and wants to build and requests financial assistance from the redevelopment agency, we require a design, you know, we have a development agreement, and we can ask for a whole variety of things in that development agreement. I'm a big fan of building buildings that look older. I should have taken the time. My grandson was 1 year old. We went to the Gateway Discovery Center for his birthday. Passed a building, brand new building. Looks old, looks industrial. First floor is retail. It's got restaurants and shops in it. The rest of it is residential. Looks old, but it is a brand new building. Myrtle Medical over here that Michael Brodsky built over a decade ago. Looks old. I can't tell you how many people who've said, if you go to tear down buildings in downtown, don't take that beautiful old building. And they started saying that 5-6 years ago. I said, that building's only 4 years old. If you go in it, it looks brand new. Marble floors, brass railings, it's gorgeous. I've heard Doug Wright say when he was on the radio, he knows it when he's in Murray because of the architecture, because of the look. We can maintain that look and feel and yet get good, usable, functional buildings. I do not disagree with the idea of getting citizen involvement. I said this in the RDA meeting. If we want to build a downtown that will attract our citizens, that'll bring the neighbors who live around downtown in, it's probably wise to sit down and ask them, what do you want? What will bring you in? I've been in sales my entire life. I tell my salespeople, first thing you need to know is who is your customer and what do they want? You are our customers. We need to ask you what you want as we bring stuff into downtown. So there'll be citizen involvement. I would love to see that. We'll see how that continues through. I would urge the new council members and the ones who will remain to look at that. But it is time for a change. We've tried multiple times to develop downtown down there, and it hasn't happened. One of the developers we contracted with wanted to build a $55 million project. Their portion of that 125% bond was $9 million. Not quite 20% to stick away. Many developers don't have the cash to do that. And we also are right now caught up on that one little block. You saw the big map of everything, but we're talking about 48 South to 5th Avenue and back to Poplar Street. It's a small block. So, you know, one of the things that we can do to preserve heritage and make things look right is to have a good, solid development agreement when we start this thing. But I saw that article and I've saved it, and I actually went to pictures, and there it was, about the rights. And unless we can find somebody with a pile of cash to come in and rescue downtown again, you know, we've got to do what we think is right. The city doesn't have millions of dollars to go off and I mean, we're spending it anyway. We bought the Murray Mansion, we have the Murray Chapel, we've got the Murray Theater. We're committed to preserve those. In fact, we've hired architects, and we've got the plans going for the Murray Theater. That little building's going to cost $8 million to renovate. If we do that with all of them, it becomes prohibitively expensive. In this ordinance, we did remove, I mean, we have put incentive in there. If you want to buy a building and come in and restore it and fix it up, we will waive all city-related fees for that. That can be significant money. We're not killing the heritage of downtown. Thank goodness for Mike Todd. He did save that side of the street. I remember when that side of the street was all pawn shops. Now it's not. It's Desert Star Theater and some other interesting places. We can maintain our look and feel. I think that's critical for Murray. But we can improve on what we have and give a place to go. Honestly, right now, my biggest concern is the state doesn't have liquor licenses. And how are you going to get a decent one-off restaurant downtown with outdoor dining and just a nice place for us to go to dinner without that? I mean, sorry, people do like to have a glass of wine, some of us, and that could hinder our development. But these are all my issues and concerns. Sorry, I thought I'd speak because I get the microphone tonight, but I'll open it up for council discussion.
I agree. I think we need to go forward. I've been hearing about redeveloping the downtown. I've been hearing about it for many, many years. I'm fourth generation Murray, and I have a very, very strong commitment and love for Murray. And I want to see it progress. I think it's a wonderful place, and through the RDA we can really control the growth, and we can control the development, and I think that's important. And I guess that's why we were elected, and I hope you can trust us in that. I think it does need some tweaking, just a couple of things, but I think it's really important that we move forward.
It's interesting, when you really hear those that have I think you commented about skin in the game. I talked to my residents, my citizens, the citizens District 5, and at first I caught myself thinking like, well, it's not our district, it's downtown. Well, guess what? When Jim talks about the city not having money, the city is you. That's us. And guess what? That's District 5 too, not just District whatever Jim's in, what are you in, Jim?
3.
You have to count 1, 2, 3.
It's on the side.
Anyway, so it's not just District 3, and I know Jim agrees with that. It's the entire city of Murray. And when you talk about skin in the game, I mean, I've heard a lot of things over the last few years that talk about we're going to get money, but I'm talking skin in the game. And that's huge to me, and that's huge to the residents that I've talked to about not raising taxes to do this and certain things. And like Jim said, and like Diane said, that we are doing. We have several things that we have purchased and we're restoring, but you can't do everything. And there's not a lot of money to be able to do that. So anyway, those are my thoughts.
I don't usually speak. I like to listen, but I want to make one point that this is going to be a living document. It's not capped in stone, and that's the end of the discussion. This is a living document that for the next 100 years, just like every other living document we have, will be changed, will be tweaked, because circumstances change, and circumstances will change downtown. And there'll be changes made to this and other zoning ordinances, I'm sure. We do it all the time. And citizen input, I'll agree with Jim, citizen input is imperative. We need to do that. We need to continue to do that. But we also have to move forward. And as situations come up, we'll look at them, we'll discuss them, we'll research them, and where changes need to be made, we'll make them.
Anyone else? I've got 2 quick things. Pay attention to the redevelopment agency meetings. We post all agendas online. We're looking at starting to post the entire agenda packet online on the Murray website. We've talked about that. That's where you'll make a difference on any project that comes through is to get the look and feel of the project. Because it is a redevelopment project, we're a lot freer than what you can do, even as a city council, because state law sometimes handcuffs us. But when we're using tax dollars to give incentives, that we have the ability to go, okay, if you want our money, this is what you've got to do. And if you don't want to do it, have a nice day. And we have done that. The other is, and I'll say this to Rosalba because she's going to take my seat. As this moves forward, I have stated this to everybody, the mayor, staff, everyone. This is not going to come as a surprise to anyone. Make sure that a legitimate traffic study is done for downtown. Not State Street. Don't care about State Street. Well, I do, but I try to avoid it. But you've got Murray Crossing west of the tracks. It's just opening. as we build downtown, as we put the fire station, it opens, as we put City Hall down with the police, you've got Box Elder and Hanover, which will become main roads as an alternative to State Street when they're extended to Vine. From 48 South, they cross 5th Avenue, stop signs, 4th Avenue, stop signs, Vine Street, stop signs. If you direct a lot of traffic off of State Street, what happens to those intersections at certain times of the day? That's what we need to see us traffic studying, because that will limit what you can do downtown. You know, people go, oh, we could put up all these tall buildings, but you may not be able to get the cars to move through there. It's a big problem on the west side. They built all of that stuff on the west side, and then somebody said, where are we going to put the roads? And, well, anybody who's ever tried to go there, come from there, or anywhere, certain times of the day understands what that means. So those are the critical things over and above this. This is just a document to get things going. There's a lot more that's going to be done through the process that you will have input on, that you can have input on. Don't get focused on one thing. The agreements, the development agreements are going to be far more critical in time. So, but I know we have seen that what we have right now for the property owners and for people who are looking to develop downtown doesn't work. So that's all I've got. If there's nothing else, I would entertain a motion or amendments or anything.
I'm not 100% sure how I feel on this. I at first was wanting to. Kim had sent us that email. Thank you, by the way. It was a great email, and Janice has talked about this also. I'm hesitant a little bit to maybe go forward on that. So I'm not sure. I was going to talk about the design review committee.
Give it a shot. See what happens.
Yeah, just consider maybe keeping them in there. Throw that out. No, it's a discussion. It's a discussion.
Yeah, it's interesting. I thought the same way. I thought Jared made a compelling reason to keep the design review committee when they were telling us to get rid of them. Sorry, Jared.
I thought the same thing, Jared. Sorry.
But it, you know,
Look at Jared.
it made me ask some questions. I do know that we have two brand new members who just started on the design review committee. Two very knowledgeable, competent members have just gone off. And I think we have two openings. So, you know, if you were going to get rid of it, now's the time. But if you think there's a good argument to keep it, I mean, we heard reasons. It's given us good projects. So,
just open for discussion.
Yep.
I think that the design review committee offers us some outside eyes. Because they are made of citizens from the community, and I think that's that.
You like that?
I think that's a positive thing for that.
Okay.
So I think.
Well, what's Dale? What's your thought on that? Look at you. Dale is going towards that mic. He usually sits back, but he's moving forward. So.
I know I'm going to regret this, but I agree with Diane.
Oh, wait a minute.
I love it.
I got a bad heart, dude. Come on.
Now, what was that?
Yeah.
Dale, would you say that again?
I'm not going to repeat it.
It's on the record.
It's on the record. If there aren't any objections, then I'm gonna move to amend that part of the ordinance and to keep the design review committee, which we refer to as the DRC. But amend the responsibilities based on the other approved amendments. That's my own feeling. There's other. They're to discuss about the responsibilities based on the approved amendments to the Murray City Center District Ordinance that they had discussed earlier. I don't know if
Let me ask.
thoughts on that, but that's a motion.
Let me ask GL, do we need to pass this ordinance before we amend it? Are you talking amendments here?
I am.
We can pass it with amendments.
Yeah. We can pass it amended.
Well, I don't think he made a motion yet. He just stated his intent. Is that correct, Brett?
Mr. Brass, can
Well,
I
after
Yes.
just say this? That you're starting with a staff recommendation.
I am.
Based on that recommendation, there'll be some things that DRC does not do any longer.
Exactly, and that's in our documents.
But you're saying keep those things.
Keep them in, but keep the committee, DRC, with those changes that have been presented to us in our documents.
Yeah, we know.
I did make that motion. I said that.
So
probably
you're
earlier.
making.
I did make that motion earlier.
Okay.
After I heard discussion from a few of my colleagues, I said I motioned to do that.
Okay, so we do have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
I would also like to make a motion. Do I do that at this time to amend?
You'd be
Okay,
making a
then-
substitute motion.
Okay. So, okay.
Okay, so you're making a motion to.
Keep the DRC.
Okay.
But with the amended, there were responsibilities were amended.
You got that. All right, so so we'll vote on that. Jennifer.
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, now we need, you want to do?
Yes. My concern is that we make sure that our downtown is developed in an environmentally responsible way. And I understand that Jared and his group also want the same thing, and we've met, and so I just want to make, we've talked about perhaps changing some of the language, and so to make it, you know, a little stricter, or, well, maybe a little clearer, not stricter, clearer. So I would like to move to further amend the ordinance to replace section 17.170.080 in the proposed ordinance with the new suggested language that we had talked about before. And it encourages sustainable development through green building, rating, or certification systems. Any incentives provided will be based on post-performance outcomes. Those are the things that we had talked about before.
This is also in 17.170.080, that language.
Okay. Okay, so then, do I need to make any changes, or is that adequate, do you think, GL?
No, I think that needs to be added.
Okay, that's what I was thinking as well. Okay.
So that's a motion?
That's my motion, yes.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Anyone care to have further discussion on that item?
I just want to make sure this encourages and doesn't mandate.
Yes, it
Correct.
encourages.
Thank you.
Okay, any others? Jennifer, if you would.
Aye.
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 Aye. So then we need a motion to adopt the ordinance amending Chapter 17.170 of the Murray City Municipal Code with the amendments. Correct? I would entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve the ordinance amending Chapter 17.170 of the Murray Municipal Code relating to Murray City Center District as amended.
I'll second.
Motion is second. Any discussion on that? Jennifer, please.
Aye.
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 Aye. And motion carries. And thank you, everyone. It does make a difference. We do try to listen. We do listen. So we'll go forward. Last item. Consider an ordinance amending section 2.62.120 of the Murray City Municipal Code related to employee holidays. Mr. Cox.
Well, we discussed this last week, or last meeting, and we've discussed it for several months about giving our employees half a day on Christmas Eve off, 4 hours. The mayor pointed out several things that we're taking into consideration, but what I'd like to do for this year is to amend the ordinance to say that we'll give our employees 4 hours off with pay for 2019, and then we'll get with interested parties through the next year to see what we do going forward.
I would, is that a motion you made, Councilman Cox?
It's a presentation, but I'll make the
Okay.
motion. I guess.
If you want, I'll make the motion. I'll make a motion that we approve an ordinance amending section 2.62.120 of the Murray City Municipal Code relating to employee holidays.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Anybody want to comment on that further? Jennifer?
Aye.
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 Aye. And that brings us to the mayor's report. Mayor, sir.
It's been a very long afternoon and evening. Thank you for all your work. I have no report tonight unless you have any questions.
No, thank you.
Not for you, thank you. All right, we are finished with our business. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.